Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. We're just waiting for all the attendees to join, and we'll get started with the webinar today, the IACLEA webinar about coping with increased responsibilities in an era of uncertainty. So thanks for joining so far. We'll take a minute or so just to make sure everyone's got a chance to get settled. Well, hello again, everyone. Today we're having an IACLEA webinar regarding coping with increased responsibilities in an era of uncertainty. Thank you very much for joining. My name is Glenn Farrant. I'm the CEO of CriticalArc, and it's an honour to be here today with the talking with the IACLEA team and supporting the IACLEA organisation. The chance to get in touch with everyone via webinars is great in these times where we can't be face to face. So thank you for joining and thank you for your attention. This webinar is really about all those situations that public safety and security teams are called on to provide support to the organisation and to increase their level of capability and services that they're providing to organisations. And in days like these, when COVID is throwing up a whole bunch of challenges, and even just in normal times where organisations are expanding, always having new initiatives, there's always a pressure on the public safety teams to support those initiatives. On many occasions, that's without any additional resources. So what we're going to be doing today is hearing from some world-leading organisations about how they've dealt with those types of challenges, both in COVID, in the past, and looking ahead. So topics such as how to increase your operational capability, how you can drive new strategic value across the organisation, doing things that have previously been impossible with the existing resources and capabilities you've had, and just generally sharing best practice. So with me today, we have firstly Steve Gahagans, Chief of Police at University of Arkansas. Thanks, Steve, for joining. Claire Humble. Claire is the head of campus safety, security and facilities at Teesside University in the UK. Claire will be giving us the international perspective and providing some insight into best practices from around the world, which we hope will be relevant and interesting. Vince from Stanford is unable to join us today due to illness, so all best wishes to Vince for a speedy recovery. I'll be stepping in and sharing some of the insights that Stanford had with regards to trying to do new things and doing more with their existing resources in the recent past. So let's get started. So before we dive into some of the detail, I'll call on our panelists here today. And for each of you, could you give a quick summary of your organisation, your role, and I guess what mode the organisation is in presently, especially with regards to COVID and what's happening within the department. So Claire, would you like to go ahead and kick that off?
Thank you, Glenn. It's my pleasure. Hello, everybody. My name is Claire Humble. I'm Head of Safety, Security and Facilities at Teesside University, which is a university in the northeast of England. We have around 18,000 students. That's 12,000 full-time and 6,000 part-time. Our campus, our main campus, is in the centre of town, which poses some problems to us because unfortunately it is one of the highest crime areas within the town centre. Just to point out a couple of differences between my staff, I have 22 safety and security staff members, and one of the key differences is that our safety and security staff do not have any warranted powers, nor do they have any firearms, and we actually don't have any powers at all other than that of a normal citizen. And I think that's probably one of the greatest differences. So I look forward to sharing our experiences at Teesside with you guys on the call today, and I look forward to listening and learning from you too, so that we can all learn together. So thanks, Glenn, for the invite, and I look forward to the rest of the session.
Thanks, Claire. Steve, over to you.
Thank you, Glenn, and thanks for everyone for attending this session. The University of Arkansas, we have about over 700 acres that we have to service. We have approximately 27,000 plus students, another 4,000 faculty and staff, and of course, like many campuses, many visitors to the campus. We're operating in this environment kind of, we started out where we had to transition to online, then we had to move to somewhat of a hybrid, and we are currently in that existence today in a kind of a hybrid method or a hybrid situation. So we are positioned in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and we're surrounded by a lot of agencies. We consider Northwest Arkansas, and they're pretty robust functioning agencies that assist us during football games and things of that nature. And that's a snapshot kind of where we are at the University of Arkansas, and look forward to the session.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that. I'll be introducing some of the concepts that have been implemented at Stanford. I think everyone would know Stanford by reputation out there in Palo Alto on the West Coast. Large research organization with a lot of high value assets on site, which provided some challenges with regards to managing a closed campus in the time of COVID and a different operational focus from the public safety team there. So we'll be referencing some of that. From my perspective and the perspective of CriticalArc, with the partnership, a corporate partnership with IACLEA, also acknowledging the partnership we have with ORCSO in the UK, we're engaged with many organisations around the world, and we've been involved with a lot of university organisations having to adapt the way they deal with safety, security, and emergency management capability in the event of COVID and in these times of uncertainty. So I hope to sprinkle in some of those learnings as well through the course of this webinar. So sticking with Steve for the moment, with the uncertainties of COVID, potentially associated budget pressures or other difficulties at the moment, how is that affecting your department operationally and in terms of resources right now?
Well, we have about 35 police officers and 5 security officers. And during a time of actually trying to work on pay increases for our department, COVID hit. So you go from a very robust campus to all of a sudden, it seemed like a ghost town. Even when we made the move to where we would go to online learning, staff members were asked to stay away from campus and try to work remotely and everything. So some anxieties began to set in my opinion, where there were discussions and feelings that, well, what are we going to do if the students are not able to return to campus? What are we going to do in the summer, and what are we going to do in the fall and even into 2021? And so we began to have those budget discussions and what the impact of what that might be, in addition to already thinking of a reduction in force just to be able to help with the pay situation for the officers. So we had several things hitting us all at once. And fortunately for the University of Arkansas, they had good financial stability where we did not experience any layoffs and things of that nature, but yet the discussions were very robust about what will happen if that were to occur. And so we had to think about, well, what are we going to do with the reduction in staff? How are we going to function, and what tools can we bring to the bear to make sure we're providing the public safety that we need to provide for our campus? And so those were pretty hot discussions going on at the time. And we are still in the process of implementing that, because we're still in that arena of looking at a reduction in force.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Steve. And Claire, how has your experience been on the safety, security, and facilities side there in the UK, with any restriction in or otherwise in resources you may have at your disposal?
Yeah, that's interesting listening to Steve, actually, because in the UK and at Teesside, we've had slightly different experience. We're currently in lockdown 3. So lockdown 1 was a full lockdown. There was nobody on campus apart from the safety and security team. So everybody had a stay-at-home order put on them, if you like, other than the security team. And actually, even though the security team were in a difficult position because they were the people that were having to come to work, and they were having to look after our mostly international students that were left with us on campus, it actually managed to raise our profile and show the value of a strong safety and security team, because we were classed as key workers. So we were expected to stay at work. So actually, differently to Steve's experience, our profile was actually raised. There's been no suggestion of any job losses. None of our staff were furloughed. Everybody came into work, and actually it was a really good news story to raise the profile of the safety and security teams. And the university were very kind in recognising the loyalty of the safety and security teams and the sacrifice they made. So all my staff at Christmas got an extra bonus of £1,000 for putting themselves into that position. So it was quite a different experience. We're currently, as I've said, in lockdown 3, which means that the majority of people are not allowed on campus. It's only the essential key working schools that are allowed in. So the School of Health, so doctors, nurses, ambulance crew, police, all those type of courses, those students are coming in for face-to-face teaching. So we've got a hybrid model where the majority of staff are at home and all the students are being taught remotely, virtually. Prior to Christmas, it was our second lockdown, and that was a model where all students received 4 hours face-to-face teaching on campus every week. So we've gone through quite a different mixture of rules and regulations, which has required us to be quite flexible with our approach to our building security and our accessibility. But in general, it's been a very positive experience for the security teams. And I know, speaking with colleagues in OXO across the board, members have felt that they have been valued, and there's certainly been no reduction. Indeed, I think it's raised the profile of the security teams, and security teams are growing as a result, not reducing. So that, in that respect, it has been a terrible situation, but from a growth perspective, it hasn't done us any harm. In fact, it's probably done us better.
Well, that's pleasing to hear. Thanks for that, Claire. Yeah. Steve, a question specifically for you. With the various pressures due to the current environmental challenges, the events of the summer with protests and so on, and focus on police team accountability, how has that affected, I guess, morale or the ability to hire, and then subsequently how you're thinking about resourcing of the police department?
Well, we know the events of the summer were pretty prevalent in a way where we all had to get engaged. We had discussions and panel discussions even on campus by Zoom or by Teams, so that we can address some of these issues. We did have a peaceful protest within the city of Fayetteville that the University of Arkansas Police Department was very much involved in, and I've been on several of those discussions to address some of those needs. I think when you talk about morale, I think some of the feeling from at least my officers and some of my colleagues, where, in speaking specifically about the campus environment, they wanted to know what channels can we use to get out there and tell them that we hear them and that we are to be trusted and that we will work in a way to provide public safety to all when that was very much in the question, came into question by many people. We're very fortunate here in Northwest Arkansas actually to be in a community though that's pro-law enforcement. So we didn't feel the effects like most of the nation or a good part of the nation, because our region is very pro-law enforcement. They were very good at coming to us, sending us food or whatever they could to support us and everything. So that was very, very comforting knowing that that was there. But when you talk about losing people and people not wanting to get into law enforcement, when we would go and actually talk to groups and some young people to get them interested in campus law enforcement, you did hear, there's no way I want to be in this profession. I don't want any part of this. And of course, we had to endure those criticisms, and we tried to counteract those criticisms with some very positive news and things that we're doing in campus law enforcement. But some, I think many, and this is something that I think is across the nation, is that they're choosing not to go into law enforcement as a career. So that will present some challenges. We got to a point where we had to stop looking at the quantity per se in our applicant pools. We had to more so look at our team members, our police department team members, to go out and actually do some face-to-face recruiting to try to get some quality personnel to apply for the positions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Steve. And then I guess it's just doubly important to ensure then that your existing resources are, as effective as possible
Yes.
in that circumstance. So thanks, Steve and Claire, for that context. We've got the baseline of where we're at and some of the challenges. Let's talk about some of the actions and some of the things you've done, I guess, over the course of the last year. So, considering what the team has been asked to do incrementally beyond the task functions and responsibilities prior to COVID-19, what challenges did that present, those additional incremental requirements present, and how did you support your staff with those additional requirements, and what initiatives did you put in place? So Claire, maybe you could talk about the Student Ambassador Program and how you've addressed safety and the perception of safety there at Teesside.
Yeah, sure. So during lockdown 2, which was our 4 hours face to face for every student, we were faced with a challenge that after lockdown 1, a lot of our staff and students were very nervous about coming back onto campus. They didn't know what it would look like and how we would facilitate teaching in a safe manner. So we had to undergo a lot of work making our buildings safe, making sure all the desks and equipment were clean and were spaced out properly. But what we also were mindful of is our staff and students coming back onto campus needed to feel like, 1, we cared about them, and 2, they were coming back to a safe and secure environment. So what we decided to do was implement building marshals, but I didn't have a big enough team to do that with the amount of buildings that we had. So what we wanted to do is involve our students in that process. And we asked some of our student ambassadors, who are students who are paid a minimum wage, to come and help out with some of the work around campus, to be our building marshals. Now, we didn't really know what to expect from them initially because we hadn't done that before, but we wrote a kind of a job description for them and set our expectations of what their role would be. We put together a box of safety and security equipment and PPE that staff and students might need. But I think one of the key roles for them was the face-to-face reassurance piece, people just welcoming them back, explaining the one-way procedure, or some of the processes that we've put in place to keep them safe. And that is probably the single most recognised process that we have rolled out through this lockdown period of the 3 closures that has helped people come back to campus. And one of their roles was, of course, introducing or reminding staff and students to download Safe Zone and check in. And there's some conversation pieces to have around how successful that was later on. But certainly we have now managed to outreach further, I think, to our student community through employing students to help us with safety and security. We've also diversified our outreach to our staff and students because we do struggle in the Northeast with diversity of our team. So, you know, the students and the international students we've been able to train and come on board with us have really raised the profile. And from a student perspective, the engagement has been significantly increased. It's been very successful. So the staff and students that are now back on campus are back on campus and very confident to be here. So we feel that we have played a key role in that, and it's certainly been recognised by our staff and students and the executive as well. So it's been very interesting, challenging, but actually some innovations there that have worked really well.
Thanks, Claire. And I think at the highest level, what you're talking about there is utilising some existing resources to augment the safety and security team, and this piece, I guess, this theme will come through the rest of this webinar. Are there any learnings in integrating these additional resources into your operations? Obviously they're not trained to the same level as a security officer, not necessarily carrying the same equipment, but how did you kind of keep tabs or incorporate them into your team operationally?
I think one of our challenges within the UK is actually improving our customer service. So historically, these safety and security teams have been more seen as a resource to secure the campus and close windows and make sure the buildings are safe. But actually now, within the UK environment, international students and recruitment and retention is a key part of our business. And higher education is certainly a multi-million-pound business now, and we're all fighting for those international students. And safety and security is in the top 3 of the majority of our international student base, particularly from Asia. So we have, we understand now the importance of a safe and secure campus. But what we wanted to do is be able to see that from a student perspective. So being able to have those ties with our students and have the conversations around what a young person actually expects and what does safety and security mean to them has been invaluable. So one of our key messages is around coming to our university because it's safe and secure. So it's not really around warranted powers or dealing with unrest. It actually is more of a customer outreach, customer service role. And being able to diversify and reach out to wide groups has actually helped us deliver that service in a more, I would guess, soft fashion, if you kind of know what I mean. So we are definitely going to be embracing our student population more and helping them help us, if you like. I've also, because I'm responsible for the facilities team, we've reshaped their role as well, so they can do some of the role for us. So some of those fire wardens, safety professionals, all that are using Safeguard and OmniGuard, and now sort of part of our wider family, if you like. So we've got a much stronger outreach into our university community through COVID-19 because we're having to reshape the offer and use other resources because we're quite a small team. So it has been quite an interesting journey, but one that we've learned from and got some real good value out of.
Great. Thanks, Claire. Steve, similar question to you. In the last 12 months, what additional types of scenarios have you had to deal with? For example, that maybe the change in the way you've had to manage football games on site, or any other areas where you've had an extended coverage or extended areas that you need to cover, and how you've managed that?
Yeah, much like Claire, we had to really get involved with the university on getting the campus prepared for the students that were returning and our faculty and staff that were returning. And so we were through our emergency management division, we were very active in that regard to get everybody back. But we did have situations where we were challenged, where we weren't the same. We weren't the same last year. And when we think about events, and now you go from having 80,000 fans in the stands, now you're down to 16,000. You cut your police force from, I think, 150 to over 200 officers. Now you're down to 40 to 60 officers. So we had some challenges in how we're going to manage all of that. And instead of having officers pretty much everywhere we needed them, we did not have that anymore. So we had to use some strategies on, well, how do we keep tabs on where officers are located? Where can we find them? And who will be the closest to certain things that might occur in the stadium that we can send them to? We knew about the areas that they would be in, but through the use of Safe Zone, actually, in the OmniGuard feature, we were able to direct our resources where they were needed most, and we were able to pinpoint who was closest. And so that made a difference in our response time and things of that nature. In addition to, we have a community that butts up against our campus. So occasionally we would have to go a little bit off campus into the neighborhoods. So we were able to track those officers in real time, where they were located. If they needed assistance, we were able to provide them that assistance with our officers, because we were limited in the number of personnel that we have working our football games. And so, and here's one example. We had a situation where someone was flying a drone right up against our stadium and everything, and we had trouble locating that individual, but we found out very quickly we needed to go off campus. And so we were going off in the neighborhoods and everything. And it was so good to be able to track that officer where they were headed in case something were to occur. So that's been one of the things that we had to make adjustments to, because we just didn't have the personnel that we once did. And we just had to change the way we look at how we would approach, especially our major events.
Yep. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, that's a creative usage of the concept of real-time visualization of your resources, which is, I think, a key aspect to trying to adapt to different scenarios. Speaking somewhat based on the experience that we've had at Stanford, Stanford, when COVID hit, obviously went into mostly campus closure type scenario, much like all other campuses around the place. And at that point in time, they realized they were potentially exposed with regards to the security of the establishments, the high value assets that were on site. So one of the challenges they had is that they actually had a slight increase in private security resources who were added essentially to the public safety team. And the challenge was to try to ensure that those resources were used most effectively in the mission of securing a largely closed campus. So in that case, they implemented the Safe Zone system, mainly from the command and control real-time visibility standpoint. And this is an example of what they could see in real time with names redacted. But what they're visualizing here is location of sworn police officers, and then also additionally other members of the community, mainly private security officers, who are undertaking a role of maintaining presence across campus. So for the first time, they had the ability to visualize where these assets are, and they actually implemented a security operations center specifically for the purpose of ensuring they're maintaining this coverage and response across this closed campus. So they were adapting with the ability to visualize where those assets were and make the most of, in this case, additional assets. This was their real-time view, their real-time coordination view. And then they also had the ability historically through operational insights to be able to understand how that team was performing and feed that back to the team and how they were maintaining physical presence. So this is just an example of a data visualization they had on a daily basis that they were feeding back to the team, where they were adapting to this scenario with the mission of ensuring coverage across this largely closed campus for the protection of the environment, and they were maintaining that with data. So a creative usage of technology to adapt to an abnormal situation that they hadn't had before. So a very powerful use of technology. Pivoting on what you had to do around, I guess, extended cases where you had to extend capabilities and deal with COVID. Steve, question for you. Extending service outside what you had normally provided your organization. I think there's a story with a medical sciences area that was added, and you added coverage for that. Could you share that?
Yeah, we became responsible for our medical sciences center which is actually what they call the University of Arkansas Medical Sciences. And their main campus is housed in Little Rock, but because they have a satellite campus here in Fayetteville, Arkansas, we were asked to provide police services and security services for that facility and so forth. And it's slightly off our campus. And so what we decided to do is take that on, and we have to go to that location off our campus and assign personnel over there. And we've even incorporated our office staff to help work over there because of the resource issue and not having to tax our patrol officers to do it. So we have commanders that are assigned over there, as well as occasionally officers are assigned over there, but really our security team provides that services in the evening hours and such. And here's an interesting situation we're in, because we provide police services and security services over there for a large majority of the week. However, there are about 2 days where we do not have any coverage over there, which we believe there should be. And so what we do is try to push out the Safe Zone app for the ones that work in that facility or students that might work on the weekends to use it and actually check in. This helps us be able to get a bird's eye view of, hey, we got a group of people checking in at our medical sciences center. So we need to go over there and make sure we're patrolling that facility, because we do have some activities over there, even though the building is technically closed. But sometimes certain students have the authority and rights to be able to go to the facility. But other remote areas that we are responsible for, we got a campus about 20 minutes from us that we are responsible for. So we definitely use Safe Zone to be able to track the activities out there, again, pushing for people to download the app and check in, so we know that we have some individuals there. The other one is we have remote areas where we patrol a wooded area, if you will. It's only controlled by the University of Arkansas, where we have many campers out there that are experiencing homelessness. And that has been one of the greatest tools we've been able to use, because we get lost in the woods, if you will, when we respond and we have to trek up in there. It's very dangerous, high risk situation. And so we are able to have a view of where the officers are. And there have been several occasions where we needed to give them support, and we were able to find them simply because we were able to locate them real time in those wooded areas.
Thanks, Steve. And one of the concepts, I guess, sharing there with the Medical Sciences Centre is the concept of protecting people in your area and potentially from multiple organisations. What we're seeing across the globe is an increasing number of circumstances where there are multiple organisations either adjacent to each other or overlapping, and their people move between those areas. There's no boundary. There's no fences between those areas, and each area has usually a capability to respond and manage safety and security in the most proactive way. And what we've seen is organisations are aiming or wanting and desiring to have the concept of safety everywhere for their people, but not taking on more responsibility for each public safety department. So here's a typical example that we'll see on campuses in the US here, where maybe there's a medical center on campus and then there's an overarching educational institution around it, but each with different security response capabilities. You know, we have this scenario here at the Anschutz Medical Campus here in Denver, where there's hospitals, but there's academic staff moving between the academic area and the hospital with no obvious boundary. And what we're seeing is organisations implementing capabilities like this, where each organisation says, I'm going to take responsibility for my area of responsibility, but I'll look after your people in my area of responsibility, but not outside. So for example, the university might respond to a medical centre person in their area of responsibility and vice versa. And this speaks to increasing the services you can provide to your people without really taking on a lot more liability. If you think about it from the perspective of an individual, so a member of staff or faculty, as they move across these environments, if they've got a consistent way to say call for help or be notified of an incident, but it's those calls for help just automatically go to different locations, depending on where they are, but that's abstracted, then that's providing a service for them where they don't have to interpret, oh, I've just stepped across this invisible boundary and now I need to call the medical center security team versus the university police team, for example. That's all abstracted out. So we're seeing this concept of safety everywhere, the concept of individuals being able to get support wherever, and organizations saying, well, this is my area of responsibility. So that's a very common thing, and we're seeing that happen more and more, especially in the States, but there's plenty of cases of that in the UK as well. So understanding that there's always limitations to the resources you have on hand, and needing to be able to, I guess, optimize the use of those resources. Again, another question for you, Steve. The question around covering campus and ensuring that your teams are operating most effectively. There's the example we can show here of operational views of before and after the visualization of the coverage of the team. Could you maybe cover ensuring that your team is operating correctly with these operational insights you may have?
Yeah, Glenn, I can tell you I'm becoming addicted to the heat map. I've been using this like crazy the last week or two, and really trying to look at the patrol patterns that we're going through, knowing that we have limited personnel, and even where sometimes we're supposed to have like 3 on duty at a time, but sometimes because of a sickness or something like that, we go down to 2. And so it's very critical we kind of look at these patrol patterns. You can see the night shift prior to review. We can look at that and say, okay, well, it maybe is okay, but it's not what we're desiring to achieve. And then when you look after studying that, then you can go back and make adjustments. And when you make those adjustments, you can see the after review where it looks like we have a more solid patrol pattern that will, of course, be good for the public safety of the university. But in this heat mapping, it became really important to me, things that I was able to discover. We would come into a meeting and we would discuss crimes occurring at a particular spot. And sometimes, more often than not, we're talking about areas that are not really on campus proper. They're outliers and remote parking lots and things of this nature. So we'll have a full discussion on that. And then I go back and I pull up the heat map and I see within the last 48 hours, because I can run reports, 24 hours, 48 hours, 96 hours. I can run the reports and I can say, okay, we're saying this, but we don't show any patrol activity at these locations that we're talking about. So why is that? And really helps bring to light, are we having a communication problem? Is the information that we're deciding as a supervisory group, is it not getting down to the officers? So we begin to investigate what's happening and then make those adjustments where we can get the proper coverage where it needs to be. And we found that also on some other properties that were away from campus that, you know, when I checked for last 48 hours, I think there was basically no patrolling in those areas. So it really, really helps us in making those adjustments and making the officers, or helping the officers to see where we're lacking. And instead of just talking about it or saying something about it, we now can pull up data and reports to show them, and then it hits home a lot better.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. That's really powerful. Claire, you've described scenarios where you've got a range of resources now. You've obviously got your security team members, and the next layers out from that, including marshals and facilities team members. How does your team understand the disposition of those resources, or ensure that the team's operating most effectively?
Yes, so the staff that work for me have all got OmniGuard on their mobile telephones and use SafeZone. And we use, obviously, in the control room, the OmniGuard for situational awareness. So we're able to identify, like Steve has said, who is the closest person to go to, and the most appropriate person to go to a particular incident or event that's taking place. So the use of Safe Zone and OmniGuard is really valuable to us to be able to get to an incident as quickly as possible, because we're quite a big campus, and send the appropriately trained person. So all our first aiders have OmniGuard, and our fire marshals as well. So it just provides us with a really significant overview of what's going on. Just interestingly, looking at what Steve has said and Steve's heat map, I use our heat map very often as well. But what I've done is I use it for an accountability purpose. So, I set my team expectations of where they will patrol and how they'll patrol, depending on where our hot locations are and hot times. But we have also turned that into a key performance indicator. So one of my team leaders' KPIs is the amount of time they're spending out of the office on patrol, and we use the heat map to hold our staff accountable to make sure that they are out and about and they are in the locations that we want them to be in. And they know that we're not going to catch them out, but we want to make sure that we are getting value for money. And when we're asked to be accountable, this is a great tool to be able to show my boss and the executive where we are on a night, what we're doing, and how we're spending our time. So we do use that as a key performance indicator for my team as well, to show that they are out and about doing the job that they're to do. So that's really great. It also consequently helps me with my facilities team as well, to see how they've been dispatched and how they're working, and do we need more people in a particular location. So from a command and control perspective, but also from a performance and workload perspective, OmniGuard has been a really great tool for me to be able to understand demand, and to be able to make sure that we've got the right people at the right time on duty, so that we can manage our crime prevention and antisocial behaviour that's taking place.
Glenn, real quick, let me throw in that when you take a crime map and you can overlay your crime map over the heat map, you really can see some discrepancies or areas that need attention. And that proves very valuable. At a time when we had some thefts during COVID-19, I think people knew the campus most people were away. And so we had criminals that were within our city that would come to the campus and commit crime. When you take that and try to get the locations of where the crimes were occurring, and you overlay that with the heat map, that's very valuable information. And that way we can adjust our patterns and try to catch some of these individuals in the act.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Steve. Yeah, we see that increasingly. We see increasingly the use of this type of data in CompStat reviews, where all of the data feeding into the department is being reviewed on a regular basis, maybe monthly in this case. And yeah, you can do these correlations, which are really powerful. Just changing tack a little bit. One of the things that we've seen as a result of COVID is public safety, security, safety teams have become somewhat more central and more ingrained into the broader operation of the organisation. Claire, you mentioned this in the UK in a very overt way, but here in the States as well, obviously the public safety teams have been there day in, day out, and they've been central to the cause. One of the opportunities with that is the ability to strengthen ties across the organisations, and examples that we've seen of the public safety team utilising tools, say like the Safe Zone system or other tools, to provide value to other organisations could be an example is, for example, University of York. They've obviously got a security team, and they manage security and safety on campus, but they extend their coverage of the safety of their individuals and work with the international department. So they've got coverage of people internationally. So in a lot of cases, we see organizations very siloed, and the public safety teams don't get involved, for example, with international, or don't get involved directly, even sometimes with emergency management. But with the ability to utilize one unified system across this range of scenarios and provide value across the organization, can elevate the position of the safety and public safety teams within the organisation and provide more value without significantly more effort. Steve, I know we've got you've got some discussions ongoing with Res Life residences on campus. Is there anything you'd want to share there with regards to extended usage?
Right. We're certainly expanding the use of Safe Zone, and we're trying to reach out just beyond the public safety, where we can work with our housing, where they can set up user groups. They can also do some tracking and readjustment in their strategic plans on when they hold events on campus, like our move-in day and some of those things that they sponsor in our housing. So I think what's going to be really interesting for us that we haven't really tapped into as much as we probably should have is the development of the user groups and those type of units, to where they could be eyes and ears for us from a public safety standpoint, as well as being able to communicate within their own department and share that information, whatever they deem necessary, with the public safety department. So that's very exciting to see what they're doing, whether it be related to COVID-19 matters or whether it's related to just overall campus security that involves our housing.
Mm-hmm. And Claire, I guess you've talked a lot about the different initiatives you've had on with COVID, but have you seen an extended, I guess, value that you've been able to provide the organisation or into individual departments within the organisation recently?
Yeah, so we've done a lot of work with individual departments and particularly around lone working. So some of our professors and academic staff have needed to come onto campus, but they might be the only person in one building. So we have written into our lone worker policy that safe zone and check-in is mandated if you want to come onto campus, and that provides the school with the reassurance that their staff are kept safe and are looked after whilst they're on campus. And we also do that with our students as well. Like Steve, we're also using Safe Zone within our student accommodation as well, to make sure that our students have an outreach so they don't feel isolated whilst a lot of them are in lockdown because they might have COVID or are self-isolating. So we have been able to use Safe Zone as a key point of contact to keep in contact with our students, and we have created user groups in between particular buildings so that we can contact the students and check on the safety, and they can contact us as well. So, we've been working with the student and library services teams to make sure that our students are left on campus and that might be isolating, have enough food, they have somebody to talk to if they need to, and we can help them if they need any help. So certainly from a reassurance perspective, and that also helps parents as well who have children that are living on campus away from home. They know that the students have that outreach and that capability of having somebody literally on the other end of an alert or the telephone to speak to and get advice. And if they need anything delivering, we've been delivering emergency food packs, for example, to our students if they run out of food and they're self-isolating. So Safe Zone has been able to help us with that outreach to our staff and our students. And we'll probably get onto this as well, Glenn, and I don't want to hog the time at all, but if we get a chance to talk about it, there's a couple of things that we've learned about recruiting people to Safe Zone that have been an unexpected consequence of some of the work that we've done. So we might get a chance to talk to that as well. But Safe Zone has helped across the board.
Yeah, please. Yeah, go ahead with that, Claire. We're getting close to time, but that's an important factor about engagement.
And I'll be very quick. But I've been a real champion of Safe Zone because I understand the benefits of it to all our community from a safety and security and command and control perspective. And about 3 years ago, we only had 400 users of Safe Zone. So we've been on a bit of a mission to try and get as many staff and students signed up. And probably by November 20, we had around 4.5 staff and students, in total signed up. But when we talked about our student ambassadors, one of the things that we did do is ask them if they could encourage their peers to sign up to Safe Zone. And we didn't know how successful that was. We created a bit of a competition that the person that got the most would get a little gift. And all our students love to be competitive and love a competition. but we actually were bowled over on how successful our students were at recruiting other students to sign up for Safe Zone. And I think there's probably a piece in there about peer-to-peer conversation and the message resonating with them. You know, it's one thing a security person that might be in some authority asking people to sign up, but the power of student-to-student conversation and narrative has taken us to almost double. So we've now nearly got 8,000 staff and students, majority of students signed up. Over probably a 2-month period, we've doubled almost our people signing up, and that's undoubtedly the majority of it down to that peer-to-peer narrative that's resonated, that people, the students now understand what's in it for them, and they see the benefit of it, you know, and they've been signing up to Safe Zone super amounts that we wouldn't have expected. So, you know, just to share that with everybody, it might well be that would work for you as well. So I think it's the power of students that have helped us increase our sign-ups 100%.
And Glenn, when you're talking about, and to Claire's point on students using this particular app, when you talk about environmental changes, and we do have a group of students that are asking those questions, how can you guarantee our safety on campus? What are you going to do differently, especially in light of the events, political events that have been going around the nation? And so they're very, very concerned. So this was a very good tool for us to be able to share with them. We're basically saying you got instant contact with us right there on your phone. And so they were kind of excited to hear about that, because we are not really adding any additional emergency phones. Matter of fact, if one has a mechanical problem or some type of problem, we take it offline because of moving to these types of platforms where the student can have that right in their hand to be able to contact us immediately. And the other feature that we really are pushing for them to report a tip, because we are saying, if you see anything suspicious, make sure you're using this to report a tip to us, and then we can do the appropriate follow-up.
Yep. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I think one of the takeaway messages there is that it's a fertile time to get the message out around managing your own safety, engaging with safety services, and so on. And no matter what solutions you have in place, it's time to be communicating and be out in front of that. And that will pay dividends over time, and will increase both the value perception of public safety and also the engagement and capability. Before we close out, we've got a few minutes left. Let's throw to Gerard. Gerard, have we had any questions from the attendees to the webinar that we should address?
Yeah, there was a question about just how Claire and Steve have reassured concerns of staff about their health and safety during the periods of COVID, just in the course of day-to-day job responsibilities.
I would chime in here and say that our administration has done an excellent job, in my opinion, in staying on top of it and communicating to the community on what's going on. We set up to where they can ask any kind of questions that they want to ask. We are very good at getting the publication and information out about COVID-19 and what the university is doing, what we plan to do with our classrooms. We have weekly meetings set up as far as the infrastructure steering committee, where we discuss how rooms are going to be prepared and sanitized, how we're going to improve upon our distancing of our students. So I think the communication piece was very, very important. So we're not leaving anybody stranded out there wondering what's happening and wondering what's going on. We took strong initiatives at the front end to make sure we're pumping out communication as often as we needed to.
Yeah, and I would probably just follow up on that, Steve, to say that we've done all of those things, and communication has been key to this, absolutely. One of the things we did do with our students, because there was some nervousness around that community, whether or not students would adhere to the COVID-19 rules and you know, keeping their distance, we actually came up with a student pledge. So students were asked to read a pledge, and it was really about their behaviour and how they were going to look after each other and have a community feel, making sure that they are keeping their distance and abiding by the rules. So all our students were asked to sign the community pledge, which was a behavioural statement around health and safety and well-being. And we hold students to account if they go against that pledge. So again, it was just trying to give students confidence that we wanted to be good community citizens and to help keep everybody safe. And by that, we wanted the students to understand that they needed to do some stuff as well to keep themselves and their peers safe, and that there was a behavioural piece that we wanted them to make sure that they were abiding by the rules. And we haven't had anybody not sign it. And to be fair, the breaches have been quite minimal. There has been some in accommodation, but certainly on campus, everybody has abided by the rules. It's been a real good success story.
Great, thanks Claire, and thanks Steve for that. All right, in closing, I'll pose the question about the future. We've talked here about ensuring that we're getting the most out of our security and public safety teams, that individuals on campus feel like they can access safety services everywhere and feel safe on campus. The concept of real-time coordination and response, being able to visualize your resources in real time to get the most out of it. And Steve, you've and Claire, you mentioned kind of the operational insights with historical data. Considering those types of capabilities and those types of concepts, are there any initiatives or even further expansion of capability you're considering in the future? Steve, I know you've got some thoughts about incorporating technology into exercising and enhancing the capability of your team. So maybe you could start, and then Claire, you can close out. So Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. We think our next move as a university, number one, to continue to pump out information to try to get more people engaged in about the types of services that we can offer to include our Safe Zone platform. But we are trying to plan future tabletop exercises and drills and things of that nature, incorporating this technology in a sense to where we understand the full scope of its capabilities, and understanding the full scope of the capabilities, then of course in a major crisis, we can use it as it's deemed to be used or use it appropriately. So we think through future exercising involving not necessarily large scale exercises, but more targeted exercises with smaller groups, so that we have in our minds better understanding of the systems that we have in place and what we can do as a public safety agency, and how we must all respond when you're talking about responding to a critical incident, that these exercises will bring more clarity that we think is needed so that we all understand our roles. And so when you have the public safety department using certain platforms, and you have our housing units and other units around campus all kind of engaged on the same message, then I think that just improves our safety overall.
Yep. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, it's one thing to have all the systems and processes in place, but actually exercising and practicing is really the key, isn't it? So
yes, absolutely.
And Claire, any thoughts about the future or anything you could share from the perspective from the UK?
Yeah, I mean, just very briefly and kind of along the same lines as Steve, from an emergency management perspective, we're really looking to use the Safe Zone app as a mass communication tool. So we're looking at how that would work and what it would look like, so that if we do have an incident on campus, if it's contained within a building, we could just send messages to the people within those buildings. Or if it's a bigger event that involves the whole campus, we can get those targeted messages out. We can target them in different languages, depending on our students' first language. So I think there's a piece of work for us to do as a university, and probably within the UK, to look at mass communication better and how we can leverage off the app. And also we're going to be looking at outreach to local colleges to use the app, so that we have a number of colleges around the area that we partner with, and their students currently don't have Safe Zone at their colleges. So it's how we can share the app with our local colleges as well. And I think finally, it's around that outreach to our students from a safety and security perspective, and our wider reach with the widest campus community. And we're really going to look at getting in a cohort of safety and student ambassadors working with us, alongside us, potentially patrolling with us, to really increase the sense of safety and a safe campus culture around our whole community. So I think it's really exciting. You know, once we can get COVID out of the way and we can move on, you know, the future's very bright for us all, I think. So I'd just like to say, Glenn, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for everybody to listening today. It's been a great experience for me, so thank you.
Yes, indeed. So thank you, Claire, and thank you, Steve, for engaging. And I'll also thank Vince from Stanford for providing input to this as well. Hopefully he's feeling better soon. And thank you to IACLEA for giving us the ability to host this webinar and provide some input and information to our fellow members. And thank you to everyone who attended for your attention and time. I hope you stay safe and the things are slowly returning to normal. And we're all very much looking forward to the next academic year when we're hoping things are returning to normal. So thank you all very much for your time, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.